I'm an atmospheric physicist, and I work on climate change, and more recently I work on solar energy. I was always good in math and physics. I never got any encouragement to do anything with math and physics. I never even thought of math and physics. I was just always very good, and I loved going to the library and looking through the Apollo books and looking through the NASA books and in my little village in Bavaria and where I grew up. And when the time came, I had to decide what I'm gonna do, go to college and what I'm gonna study. I didn't think of math and physics. And I started informatics, actually, because informatics back then was something you could do and stay at home, be an at-home mom and work it from home. But I didn't like it. The only thing I liked was the math part. And then I just discovered math and physics and meteorology. The atmospheric physics just felt so right. And this was the time of the environmental movement back in Germany, the Green Party. And I never wanted to be a politician, but I wanted to contribute something to the world. Being a woman in my field, when I studied, I didn't feel it was a negative. I was just one of many. But the higher up I came after the PhD, it felt lonelier and lonelier. I think the feeling of loneliness was the worst, and just not. You couldn't be yourself. I always wondered, how can I be a woman? Can I be really myself and do the math and the physics right? Because math and physics is gender neutral, and it was very hard. I always had to go out of my field to feel my true self. WINGS is an organization that, for me as a fellow, brings women together, and we all share a common experience. And it's so wonderful to see these women all over the world sharing our commonalities. And we are really different, and the fields are really different. And we all have something in common. And I think it is because the way WINGS selects us, it's also how gracious WINGS is towards us. The board and what WINGS brings to us makes us better people, I think. Better scientists, or better, in my case, better entrepreneurs. And it's just a great example what women can do to other women. I got the Earth Award for global dimming. And when I started out working on global dimming, and I said this before, I always felt alone in my research. The positive thing about feeling alone is I could do whatever I wanted. Nobody cared. So I could just not do what everybody else did. And that's how I discovered global dimming. And of course, once it came out, it was rejected and rejected and rejected and rejected. People didn't believe me. And only later on, when other people confirmed my results, it became this big thing. And WINGS recognizes the struggle. That's what it does. It recognizes that people have to struggle to get where they want to. And I use the WINGS Award to actually fight another struggle and start changing the way we think about solar energy. And I know it's the same struggle, and I already have faced all these rejections again. And the WINGS Award I used the WINGS Award to pay for a patent, actually, to get the patent. Global dimming is the fact that the reduction of sunlight masks part of the global warming. And by just reflecting sunlight back to space or keeping it in the atmosphere but not reaching the surface. And when we discovered global dimming, we could answer several open questions in a climate change debate that were related to the water cycling in the atmosphere, rainfall patterns, for example. My greatest accomplishment is not giving up on global dimming. I always tried to anticipate the critique. I always tried to be better than everybody else, and tried to, and I hoped sometime people would see that this is as important as I thought from the beginning. It was hard to prove it, but I could have given up so many times. I think this was my greatest accomplishment. My greatest influence in my life is actually my grandaunt. She was a tailor in this village I grew up, and she never married, but she had her own life back in the early 20th century, and I always admired her so much, and I visited her often, and I wanted to be a tailor. And she said, "You can't be a tailor because you are a lefty. There are no machines for lefties. You have to do something else. You have to work with your brain." And she had a very funny saying. She would say, "Never mix blue and green patterns." And everything I do when I make climate, we often make maps, and it has the land and it has the ocean, and it's always green and blue. And sometimes when I see these patterns, I think of my grandaunt, and I think, never mix green and blue. I'm often asked by younger women what they should do, or I'm asked for advice. And my advice is often, don't get intimidated and try to find your own self. And it might be a girly girl, you might be a girly girl type, you might be a punk, it doesn't matter. There is a place for you, you just have to find it. And it's important to not get intimidated and just keep looking for what you really are. Climate change is a big problem, and I said the lack of empathy is the biggest obstacle we have to overcome, because I think we can't just point to the scientists and the engineers and say, you fix our problems. We actually have to come together and have, it's an economic problem, it's a political problem, it's a societal problem. And it's also a lot to do with justice, social justice amongst countries, between our own country. And this all needs empathy first. We have to actually get together and start the discussion. We have to muddle through and not just point the finger and say, you engineers give us the perfect solution. Many problems we can fix, we can find a solution on an engineering side once we have the right framework, but the framework has to come from the society, which are the people, and that's why I say empathy is more important than anything else. The one message I would put on a billboard would be nice to each other. Yeah, very simply. Wings is important for me because right now I'm in a position where I try to do something new, and Wings came at the right time, and I can use the contacts I'm making now with other scientists, with the Wings board, and all the nice people who support Wings, to fulfill my potential. It takes more than just me. It takes everybody else. It takes a village.